UFC 258, we got a scrap on our hands. The champion from the welterweight division, Kamaru Usman, is facing the stiffest competition that 170 has to offer in Gilbert Burns, man. So we got a pay-per-view here coming up, folks. You can see the layout is a little bit different. We're going to get all of the housekeeping situated. So first and foremost, today is our UFC 258 preview show where me and my co-host AJ, we're going to come and we're just going to, take a look at what Saturday night's action is going to bring. We're going to recap and all that good stuff over on Monday, and then on Wednesday you join me for the betting show. So as you can see right down here, man, this is our weekly show lineup and all of that good stuff. But without any further ado, let me bring in my co-host AJ. AJ, living good out there in sunny California. How are you living, bro?
Man, doing very well. Like you said, Derek, sunny California, still loving it out here, brother. How you been?
I'm living good, man. I'm living very good. And, ultimately right now in Portland, we got snowstorms and all that nonsense coming on, but that isn't even on my mind. You want to know why? It's because I'm really hyped to see about this welterweight main event, man. Usman versus Burns. Usman on a 16-fight active win streak. Gilbert Burns 5-0 in his last 5. They're both running through their competition, man. This is a fight right here that is going to determine a lot in the welterweight division because, as you know, we can go 4 months without any welterweight fights, or we can go, 3 weeks with like 10 welterweight fight. So listen, man, I'm really excited to get the thing going and do all of that good stuff. But we're going to do what we do best here. You want to know why? Because this is the preview show where we talk about a couple of sleepers. So let me do a little bit of justice for us. And
it's time for some fight night.
If you ain't paying attention, you're going to sleep on me and I'm going to wake you up.
Listen, man, don't sleep on these folks, right? AJ, start us off. Who's your first?
Exactly, Derek. Like you said, don't sleep on it. These are two young dudes coming up hot. I got first up Gabriel Green versus Philip Rowe. Now, the gifted Gabe Green is very underrated, but he's one hell of a scrapper, okay? He's old enough in the game to know not to stand and trade, but there's still a lot of dog in him where he's going to do exactly that. Now, Philip Rowe, he's long, lanky, and he's going to make you pay from a distance, and he shows great heart back in the Dana White Contender Series. And, man, I'm expecting exciting, flashy, a lot of energy coming into this fight, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Who you got for your first sleeper?
My first sleeper, I'm going with the women's strawweights in this one. I got Poliana Viana, the Brazilian who's known for knocking Amanda Ribas out back in 2015 versus Mallory Martin, who is, listen, man, she's 4-1 in her last 5. She got a crazy comeback victory over Hannah Cifers in her last outing, and she's kind of come up through LFA and Invicta. And why this is a sleeper is because Poliana Viana, all 11 wins have come by either knockout or submission. No decision wins on her record. And as for Mallory Martin, man, she really needs a win to start creeping closer to that top 15. So ultimately with Viana right now, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you, man. I think she's on the 3-fight losing skid right now, so she needs a win if she wants to avoid potentially being cut in this cold game that is the UFC. So this is going to be a scrap, man. Tune in for this one. What's next, AJ?
Next up for me, Derek, I got a fight that feels like it should have happened a long time ago, but it's happening now, thankfully. So I got Diego Lima versus Bilal Muhammad, all right? Now, for a long time, I've been praising the AT&T Brazilians for exactly that, their savagery, and Limo's no different. Technically strong and not afraid to bleed, right? Bilal's no slump either. Great pressure, has a hell of a heart, and their techniques really match up well. Diego Lima is going to push forward. Bilal Muhammad fights really well off the back foot, throwing counters. Someone's going down. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to see who it is. Who you got for your second?
Well, first, man, that Diego Lima versus Bilal Muhammad, it's surprising. You hear those names, you would think they on a main card or something like that. To see that this is on the prelims, man, for free, yeah, y'all got to tune in for this one, man. So my last sleeper, because we're only doing 2 apiece since this is a pay-per-view bout, is a former ranked fighter, man. Julian Robertson, fighting at women's flyweight, is facing off against Miranda Fear the Maverick, man. Her last name is actually Maverick. It's a pretty badass name overall. I do have to say that. But listen, Julian Robertson, man, she's 3-2 in her last 5. She's coming off a nasty loss to Tyler Santos, who, was very surprising. A lot of people didn't really think that. She was a betting underdog on that one, so I guess that is there to be said. But ultimately, this is the story for Jillian Robertson. 6 submission wins, only been subbed once, versus Miranda Maverick, who also has 6 submission wins, but has never been submitted. Now, Miranda Maverick is big for the division. She's got real deal power, but she has a lot less experience because she basically came out of Invicta, whereas Jillian Robertson entered the UFC with only 5 wins. So she kind of grew up here. This is going to be really interesting because if Maverick can pull off a very decisive win, she just fast-tracked her way up to damn near the top 15 after only one fight. This will be her second fight in the UFC, but that's crazy to enter the top 15 that quickly. It's kind of like a Manel Kopp. He didn't enter the top 15, but he's in my top 15, so there's that. So tune into this one. This is also the first fight of the night, so this is going to be a good one. Tune in early. AJ, you hit your last one. All right, listen, man, you know what time it is? It's time to talk about some made-card bouts, AJ. So listen, man, let's switch over to Maki Pitolo facing off against Julian Marquez, man. First and foremost, I don't think that this is going to be a really popular bout in terms of like fans understanding and knowing these athletes, right? Julian Marquez especially, because this is a hardcore fans bout. This is two Dana White Contender Series alumni facing off toe-to-toe, man. So Maki Pitolo is from Season 3 of the Contender Series. Julian Marquez is from Season 1. And Marquez, he noted in his pre-fight interviews that he's representing his Dana White Contender Series alumni, saying Season 1 was the best talent that the show had to offer, and he's going to prove it on Saturday night. My question to you is this. Julian Marquez, his last fight, he's coming off of a loss to Alessio Di Chirico, who just got the big win over Joaquin Buckley, but it was a split decision loss, whereas Maki Pitolo, his last loss was versus the very talented Impa Kasanganai, who got knocked out by Joaquin Buckley, and that was a very decisive unanimous decision win. My first question off the bat is, being that these are two legitimate strikers, once the round gets to the third round, who has the advantage to you in terms of on the feet? I think that gas tank is something we do have to consider for both of these fighters.
Like you said, Derek, gas tank is a big thing we have to consider for these fighters, especially for Maki Pitolo. Lately, you've seen him exactly. A lot of his downfall is because he's really good in the first round, and if he doesn't get you out in the first round, it's going to be a long night standing there in the deep water. Now, Julian Marquez, I think he has the advantage when it comes late in the rounds, especially with his new mindset and his new training. Taking that, he was quoting it in his pre-fight interview with 31 months off. Taking all that time and finding that rejuvenation and love for the process, I think is going to do him well later in the rounds and when he starts to feel that love for the actual reward of that process. What do you think?
Well, you know what, man? I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think both fighters get tired as the rounds go on. I mean, come on, we're fighting. This is, you know what time it is. But legitimately, I think Maki Pitolo has a bigger drop-off because when, kind of that gas tank starts depleting, it's not just the output that drops. It's not just the speed that drops. It's the head movement, man. He stays in the pocket just a little bit too long, and that's one of my critiques, is that Julian Marquez, he has the advantage in the pocket because he pops his shots and then he gets out. You know what I mean? Like, he has really deceptive head movement, which is, I think it's going to favor him in the later rounds because he's still going to be able to kind of get off of the center line, which Maki Pitolo, he'll just trade and bang, man. And he's got a chin. Both of these fighters have a chin, but both, strengths, in my opinion, is boxing combos in the pocket and experience for Maki Pitolo. You know what I mean? Maki Pitolo has 20 fights. It's like, this dude is, let me see, he is 1-3 in the UFC, but he has 20 fights. So he's done a lot of dirty work outside in the regional promotions and whatnot. When it comes down to this, Maki Pitolo has 7 knockouts in 20 fights. Julian Marquez has 6 knockouts in 7 fights, or 6 knockouts in 9 fights. What does that tell you when you see a stat like that?
6 knockouts in how many fights? Excuse me, internet cut out.
In 9 fights.
Ooh, yeah, well, exactly. Maki Pitolo is heavy-handed. I mean, there's a reason they call him coconut bomb.
No, this is Julian Marquez. Julian Marquez has 6 knockouts in 9 fights. Maki Pitolo has 7 in 20 fights.
7 and 20. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, if you look back at Julian Marquez, a lot of his fights, he's a lot of heavy pressure, and he hits shots on people that they don't actually see coming. Mm-hmm. And I think being the way he was and kind of under-talked and under-praised, under-hyped, he's not necessarily somebody that looks dangerous. And he's more of just a power, like pressure forward, just a kind of a big bear that's coming at you. So I think that right there plays into his attacks. Like you said, 6 for 9. That's a lot of putting people down. You know what I'm saying? Either way, because he's going to hit you hard. But the one that hits you hard or that hits you out of nowhere you're not expecting is the one that actually puts you down. So, it speaks more to his fluidity and movement for being somebody who can get close and actually in range of striking. What do you think? Right
on. Well, listen, man, I don't know. When I look at this, I want to say, okay, well, Marquez has a lot less fights. So, like, to have those types of numbers, it is impressive. But you also got a lot less fights. So, what type of caliber of competition are you really facing off against, right? I mean, Maki Pitolo, he's fought for regional championships. I mean, he's lost regional championships as well. But that's just kind of the stuff that I'm talking about. Now, you alluded to it earlier, but Julian Marquez is now training with James Krause, under James Krause at Glory MMA. And he says that's been a big mindset change. James Krause has made him kind of embrace that blue-collar workmanship, right? So I think it goes hand in hand because this dude Marquez is an actual beast, man. Like he had Phil Haas backpacked on him and just stood up Derek Lewis style in their Contender Series fight, which I thought was pretty incredible. But nonetheless, man, 1-1 in the UFC. He's got to prove why his nickname is the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I think he will get it done. But I do want to just ask you this before we give our pick on this one. So Darren Stewart is the common opponent between both of these fighters, right? They both fought Darren Stewart 2 fights ago. Now, Maki Pitolo lost. He got submitted in the first round. Nobody saw it coming. We predicted that fight. Nobody saw it coming. Neither of us did. Now, Julian Marquez, he got the dub against Darren Stewart, but he submitted him in the second round. So I think that Julian Marquez, though he only has 1 submission to Maki Pitolo's 3, I do think Julian Marquez has a little bit better ground game, and I do think that's the additional weapon that is kind of putting it over the top for me. I just wanted to kind of point that out. So, AJ, who's your pick and why?
Yeah, Derek, that's actually what I agreed with a lot, is exactly that they both can stand up and bang, and they both can trade, have great hearts, have great chins. But Marquez has the one advantage of where he can go to the ground and has that one dependency. For me personally, I'm going Marquez, KO round 1. I'm expecting a very exciting, flashy, very fast-paced first round. Who you got?
So I'm basically along the same lines with you. I'm just going Marquez knockout round 3. And the reason why is because, like I said, I've seen Maki Pitolo take big shots from Impa Kasanganai, you know what I mean? Take shots from Darren Stewart, Chris Bird, who he actually knocked out, you know what I mean? Like he's fought some, not the best opposition, but he's fought some hitters. And with that being said, the reason why you can sit there with the inability to move your head and all that is because you got a granite chin and these dudes are not knocking you out. But I don't think that Marquez is going to try to force it. So I think knockout round 3 sounds good to me. So let's move on to the next one. So the next one is the one that I talked about, which I said this got moved up to the main card. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. If it didn't get moved up to the main card, I was about to say, so they're going to move up Andre Ewell versus Chris Gutierrez to the main card, and we get Jim Miller versus Bobby Green for free. Okay, I'll take that. But, you know, now you're going to have to pay for it. Sorry, folks. So, anyways, Jim Miller, man, this dude is tied with Donald Cerrone for the most, I believe, most fights in UFC. If it's not most fights, it's most wins. Nonetheless, it's a ridiculous amount. Jim Miller at 32-15, and in the UFC, he's 21-14. Incredible, nonetheless. This is a dude who's seen it all, done it all, and Bobby Green knows that. But Bobby Green, 27-11-1, fighting out of Pinnacle MMA. Come on, man, this is going to be a real deal scrap. Now, I want to set the table for this one really quickly, AJ, and I kind of want to get your question. I want to get your opinion on this. There we go. So Bobby Green, right? This dude comes out generally speaking as an orthodox fighter, but he notes that he kind of comes out like a quarterback. I don't know why he made that parallel, but he says I come out like a quarterback and I just give what the defense gives me. You know what I mean? That's how I react, right? So it's not like I have this game plan that I'm sticking to and it just is what it is. I react to whatever you give me. So versus Clay Guida a couple fights ago, started his a 3-fight win streak that Green went on. He came out southpaw just to trick Guida because they thought that Guida was ready for him in orthodox, so he came out southpaw. Now, my question to you is facing Jim Miller, who is a southpaw. Do you think it would be strategic for him to kind of keep going that way or just stick to orthodox or switch? How much of that stuff even matters to you?
I mean, I think if anytime you fight somebody who's southpaw, whether you're southpaw or not, it's always challenging just because there's not many out there, so you're not really facing it. So I think, Bobby Green having that talent to switch is one of a good thing going into it because you always can rely on it. Just like if this isn't working, well, let's try it from the other side. I'm comfortable that way. This guy is uncomfortable that way. Or at least let's try it, see how it goes. I do think it plays into advantage, being just something that Bobby Green has a little spice extra in there.
Well, that's the thing, man. Bobby Green said that Jim Miller has seen it all, done it all, but he's got a couple things that Jim Miller hasn't quite seen yet. And, Bobby Green's a great talker. He's a fantastic talker. But let's talk about Jim Miller and his 18 submission wins. Let's talk about that for a second. 6 rear naked chokes, 4 arm bars, 3 guillotines, 2 triangles, and 1 knee bar. Almost like he just wanted to put it in that perfect order for you. Now, Bobby Green's no slouch neither. Jim Miller might be a black belt jiu-jitsu, player, right? And a former NCAA Division I wrestler. But Bobby Green, he's a BJJ blue belt, and this dude can hold his own on the ground as well, man. My question to you comes down to this. I think Bobby Green clearly has the advantage on the feet. It's very, very clear. Dude's head movement, distance management, all of that good stuff. I think that's all in Bobby Green's favor. Now, when it goes down to the ground, Jim Miller is a little bit different than Clay Guida because he got that active guard, and he's going to go for heel hooks, knee bars, arm bars, rear nakeds, all the things that I just noted to you. Now, where do you think this fight's going to take place, ultimately, man? I've been racking my brain, and I really don't know where it's going to go. I think Jim Miller's going to chase the takedown as he normally does, but if, Bobby Green got some good takedown defense. What are your thoughts?
This was actually a very hard fight for me to actually pick out and decide like exactly what you said, what's going to happen. Because being a vet of Jim Miller, he knows, like you said, a lot. He sees what's going to do. And I do predict that he's going to have a little bit more go ahead, and a little more pressure in the beginning, and let Bobby Green see what happens, try to let him read it, but maybe just overpressure him. Can that happen? Yeah, maybe. As well as Bobby Green could just step back one time and land a big shot, change the tide of the game, and then pressure him from then on out. Now, what's going to happen, I think personally, is it's like I said, I battled it very, very hard. Now, I do think it's going to be a long chess match going back and forth, battling the exact whole time. Now, my question to you, Derick, I wanted to ask this. In these kind of fights with Jim Miller, longtime vet that we're seeing against Bobby Green, somebody come up. What does Bobby Green have to do to actually make that star power? Is Jim Miller enough name to put Bobby Green in the top upper echelon? Or as well as, do you want to see Jim Miller become a gatekeeper? Is this one of those defying factors where if he loses this fight or wins this, like it's just the outcome of this fight, does he become a gatekeeper like we talk about?
Listen, Jim Miller is a tough outing regardless of, you know what I'm saying, what streak he's on, who he's fighting. It does not matter. Jim Miller is always going to be a tough outing like a Clay Guida. So we talked about Guida being possibly a gatekeeper, but I don't think either of these guys are close enough to the top 15 to be gatekeepers, honestly. Bobby Green, he already noted that he doesn't care about losing. He says that he's in it for the money at this point. It's not about a championship for him. And this is what's the most interesting, man. I'll tell you what Bobby Green needs to do to get that star power. He needs to finish. That's what he needs. And this is the reason why I'm going to spin this whole thing, because this is the reason why I picked who I picked in this one, man. I think that Bobby Green, who has 10 decision wins under his belt, he's lost 7 decisions, he's won 10. Jim Miller, he's won 10 decisions, lost 10 decisions. I think the difference here is that Bobby Green has gotten ripped off on the judges' scorecards before. He knows it. In the Thiago Moises fight, he probably should have won the fight and be on a 4-fight win streak right now. But nonetheless, this is what it comes down to. Bobby Green is content fighting out a decision win because he does not care what anybody thinks about the fight. He'll tell you, you're a nerd. You weren't in there. You don't know. I know. But if you're going out and letting the judges decide, you never really rise to that star power. Usman is like the only one, you know what I mean? Just because he's 50-45 in everybody, you know what I mean? Straight domination. So that's my thoughts on that one. But ultimately, let me give you my pick as well for this one, man, because I think this one, while there's a lot of things to think about, I think that this is the overall edge, man. Optics, the way it looks, I think Bobby Green being on the back foot or being his back against the cage with Jim Miller in the clinch, or, you know, even in the guard with his back on the mat, I just think it's not going to look good, and I think Jim Miller is going to win a decision. That's my thoughts. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think a lot of stuff goes into this exact fight, like you're saying. But personally, I think old dogs are hard to put down, man. And I think Bobby Green is going to go out old school way on just decision piecing it up. And I do think he's going to out edge the old dog in Jim Miller and get the decision win.
And let me actually just add this as kind of a last piece on this, because I talked about this on the betting show, folks. Wednesdays, come tune in. But Jim Miller is a plus, he opened up the week as a plus 205 underdog, and I couldn't quite understand that one. I was like, Bobby Green as a minus 280 favorite. I think this fight is so much closer than what those odds are representing. So much closer. And yes, I agree. I think this one should be more of a pick'em than it should be full out Bobby Green. But hey, man, anything could happen. Folks, tune in for that one, because that will be a very, very good fight. Now, let's move on to the next one, man. So this one I'm pretty excited for, just because these are two scrappers right here, man. Kelvin Gastelum, ranked number 9 in the middleweight division, versus number 15th ranked Ian Heinisch. And listen, man, or Heinisch. I hope I got that one right. Nonetheless, first off, before we start into anything, do you know about Ian Heinisch's his story? Do you know about his background at all?
Not much about his background. No, I've only just watched his fights.
Bro's got the craziest story. Like, dude came up in like a decent household and whatnot, and, was going to high school and did all that stuff, but ended up having some finance issues. So he decided, all right, I'm going to start selling ecstasy to kind of supplement my income. Got caught up, went to jail, did all that shit, came back as a fighter and all that craziness. Folks, that was a very, very botched version of the story, but go, take a look on your free time, man. I thought it was really interesting because when you look at him, he just looks like a blue collar guy. But, this is the hurricane we're talking about. So let's talk about this, man. Kelvin Gastelum, 2-3-0 in his last 5, not the greatest, versus 3-2-0 for Ian Heinisch. But these dudes, I wanted to point out, when I was doing my film study, they're very, very even on paper, right? Gastelum, 6 knockouts, 5 submissions, 5 decisions. Heinisch, 5 knockouts, 2 submissions, 7 decisions. Very, very close, right? Gastelum 5'9", Heinisch 5'11", 71.5 for reach for Gastelum, 72 for Heinisch. Man, everything is the same. Everything is the same except the stances, right? Now, Gastelum is a southpaw, and Heinisch is an orthodox fighter. And I think there's a lot to be talked about on this one. Let's not fail to mention that Heinisch just underwent a camp switch, right? So dude was fighting over at Tiger Muay Thai for a while. He says he's a nomad. He trains everywhere, but he was fighting over at Tiger Muay Thai for a while. That wasn't even his regular home gym, but now he trains with Genesis Training Center and Elevation Fight Team. So he might be getting a little love from Trevor Whitman up in Colorado. Now, this is another Dana White Contender Series OG alumni back from 2018, while Kevin Gastelum, BJJ black belt from 10th Planet, all that good stuff. Let's talk about it, man. Game plan for Kelvin Gastelum, we know what it is. It's to gauge the distance, get the timing down, and blast that left hand into Heinisch's face. Now, Heinisch, who comes out as a very fast starter, is putting a storm on people in the first round. How is this fight kind of playing out to you? Like, when you're kind of envisioning it in your head, like, what do you see happening in this one?
Man, I think the background that Heinisch had, where he learned that exact striking, like you're saying, out of Tiger Muay Thai from the motherland, I think that confidence having against where he has a long, lanky reach, especially putting on who was his last opponent with GM3, how he landed that overhand right, just going right. That confidence ending that kind of fight against another guy who's shorter, has the same kind of tactic that Kelvin Gastelum's going to have, goes in playing a lot of, giving him to a lot of confidence. Now, can Kelvin Gastelum draw him in, lure him in, drop a bomb at any point? Yes, 100%. But he's dangerous, very, very dangerous. But I personally think Heinisch is going to control a lot of it, maintain range, and just basically bully Gastelum. What do you think?
Interesting. Well, you know what, man? I was thinking that Kevin Gastelum, to me, is kind of entering that, like, Dan Hendo territory. And what I mean by that is that everybody knew the H-bomb was coming, and he still smashed everybody's face in with the H-bomb. And I think Kelvin Gastelum, people know about the left hand. They know that that's the money shot right there. And I think that Heinisch, if Gastelum can survive the first round, I don't think Heinisch necessarily has a chance if it goes the distance. And the reason why is because, like I said, Heinisch puts a storm on his opponents in the first round, while Kelvin Gastelum, he's more of I'm going to sit back and I'm going to gauge distance and timing. That's his entire game plan. Now, a couple of the strengths that I had written down for both of these fighters is that for Gastelum, left hand, of course, his timing, his chin, his takedown defense, and his strength of schedule. Let me talk about his last 5 real quick. He's lost 3 of his last 5, don't get me wrong, but just the opposition, right? So for Gastelum, he got heel hooked in the first round by the Joker, Hermanson, lost a split decision to Darren Till, had a fight of the year, with Israel Adesanya for the middleweight championship. He beat Jacare Souza by split decision, and then he knocked out the Count, Michael Bisping, and just a long time ago, but knocked him out in the first round. Now, Ian Heinisch, like you said, mirrors chart, right? Got that first round knockout. Omari Akhmedov, he just lost a unanimous decision. Derek Brunson lost a unanimous decision after almost starching him in like the first 15 seconds. Dude had Brunson rocked, but he's a veteran. You know how that goes. Antonio Carlos Jr. win, who just got cut, and then Cesar Fajeda, he has a win unanimous decision. The strength of schedule isn't even comparable in my opinion. Kelvin Gastelum has been regarded by Ian Heinisch as a legend of MMA, of UFC. I don't think he's quite there yet, but he has fought the who's who. I think he needs a belt first if he really wants to be that legend. But ultimately, man, I think that Kelvin Gastelum, the thing that concerns me is he might try to force the action, right? When you're on a 3-fight losing streak, you don't really have much room to lose again. Four fights in a row, it doesn't matter who you are, man, that's not looking good. That's like Anderson Silva territory, right? So being that Heinisch is a bruiser while Gastelum is much more of a tactician, if this fight were to somehow, some way hit the ground, who has the advantage to you? I already said Gastelum is a BJJ black belt, but this dude doesn't even average 1 takedown a fight. He's not on the ground very much. He wants to get it on the feet.
Even though I think Gastelum is, I don't think he is. I know he is a BJJ black belt, like you're saying. I don't think he's comfortable on the ground, and we saw it in the Jack Hermanson tap out when he got him with that heel hook. He literally didn't know to roll or to kick off with his leg. He tried to push with his arm, only making it worse. It was, I can't remember the exact commentator that was saying it, but it only made it worse. And I don't know. I think necessarily Kelvin Gastelum's looking to stand up, looking to trade, looking to wrestle, more so comfortable being dominant and not necessarily comfortable mixing it up. Now, I think so personally with that, given that I give Heinisch the advantage in the ground game, and I don't even know necessarily if his ground game is that tested. But I do know that he's very interested in mixing it up. And when the pressure's on, he's good good in exchanges. What do you think?
Well, listen, man, I think Ian Heinisch has the advantage simply because of how athletic he is. Dude's athleticism is next level, and that's part of like his just overall strength, his athleticism, you know what I mean? This dude gets out of tough positions simply due to explosiveness a lot of the time, you know what I mean? Like when he was fighting Amari Akhmadov, you know what I mean? He was doing, you know, a bunch of just exploding, getting out of the, you know, when his hands were clasped, just breaking the clasp by doing something crazy. When he fought Derek Brunson was trying so hard on a single leg, and Heinisch was just balancing on one foot. Joe Rogan was even like, this dude's balance is like oddly weird. Like it's oddly too good. It should not be this good. No one that big should have that great of balance. So with the bruiser, with the takedown defense of Ian Heinisch, man, I think all around, if this thing ends quickly, you got to go Heinisch, but I'll give my pick. And I think that Gastelum, who has seen so much, who's fought so many killers back to back to back to back, I think he'll be able to weather the first round, and I think that he'll get it done via decision because he'll be a little more fresh in the third round. So yeah, Gastelum decision for me. Who you going and why?
For me personally, I'm going with Heinisch with an early KO win, and I just think that he reminds me of a lot of a very young Wonder Boy. He's going to be in there. He's going to be striking. He's going to be controlling the distance, and he's big. He can hurt you. It's the difference between him and Wonder Boy is he packs that drop in power. Now, Kelvin Gastelum, his biggest downfall is he was facing A-list talent when he was just young, and it kind of dampened his growth instead of helping him out. So I don't think he's necessarily there, and I know he was blaming a lot of his downfall on his mental ability and saying he wasn't focused. So if he is focused, it's going to be a great fight, but they personally think Heinisch is going to get the KO win early, round one.
It's interesting you say that, man. That was my one weakness that I had down for Kelvin Gastelum was lack of focus. Like, you know, it's like when you fight to the level of your competition, you know, you rise to the occasion versus Izzy, and then, I mean, you get heel hooked by the Joker in like 10 seconds, you know. I don't know. That's something, man. But all right, man. Next up, we got the co-main event, right? So listen, man, I'm really excited for this fight just because we haven't seen Maycee Barber fight in quite some time. She's ranked number 10 in the women's flyweight division. She's fighting Alexa Grasso, who is now, this is going to be her second career fight at flyweight. She made her UFC name and the strawweight division. But listen, she had a lot of hype on her coming up, man. She was 12-3-0. She is 12-3-0 in the UFC, but all three of her losses have come in the UFC, man. So you know what I mean? Like I said, you come here, this is where streaks come to die, man. Welcome to the big show. But Maycee Barber, man, let's talk about some odds just really quickly because this one blew me out the water as well. Maycee Barber, whose nickname was The Future, who was thought to be, she had this counter on her phone, or this countdown thing on her phone to be the youngest champion in UFC history, younger than even John Jones. And obviously losing to Roxanne Modafferi is definitely going to put a wrench in those plans. But I think that we can chalk that one up to fluke, right? She tore her ACL after getting jabbed in the face. I don't know how it happened. I watched it back a bunch of times. I still don't quite understand. But when you still have the tenacity and the grit to go and try to ground and pound and still strike with a torn ACL in the fight versus someone who's been doing it for 18 years like a Roxanne Modafferi, man, it tells a lot. So Maycee Barber opened up the week as a plus 105 underdog versus Alexa Grasso, who, like I said, is ranked number 15th in the flyweight division. Grasso is a minus 135 favorite. So it's not crazy, but still, Maycee Barber being an underdog, man, she in her last 5, she's 4-5, and she has 4 knockouts in those 5 fights. What are your thoughts, first off, on just the optics of this? Why do you think Maycee Barber is an underdog? Why do you think Alexa Grasso is having so much support from the media right now?
Well, first off, I got to say, for making those odds, place the money on Maycee Barber because she's an absolute savage. Those odds, that's absolutely insane. And I think what goes into that is the fact that she had that layoff. She got, I mean, worst case scenario. Let me explain this to you, Derick, or lay out the situation. Worst case scenario, right? You blow out your knee. You're in a fight. You're in a fight with somebody. You don't know who. You blow out your knee. You're on top of you. They're landing elbows. Blood's pulling up in your eye. You look up, and it's Roxanne Modafferi landing elbows. The Happy Warrior. I mean, anybody else. Give me anybody else in the world besides Roxanne. And I love fighter, man. She's an amazing fighter, not to take anything away from the Happy Warrior, but that's just worst case scenario, you know. And seeing the heart that Barber had to fight a round and a half on a blown out ACL, like you said, it was the first jab of the second round. She literally fought, almost 11 minutes or 9 minutes with a blown out ACL. It's absolutely insane. Her heart's crazy, and I don't really exactly know why. Besides long-term layoff, somebody would give them those odds. What do you think?
I think so. I talked about this on Wednesday, man. I think this is the odds makers like retribution. I think that because Roxanne Modafferi, she was a I don't know what she was, but Barber was a minus 400 favorite in that fight. So it was like one of the biggest upsets we've seen in quite some time. So I think this is payback. I think this is like you fooled me once, you're not going to fool me twice. But I think where they made the mistake is that, like I said, Maycee Barber, 5 knockouts. 3 of those 5 knockouts have come in the UFC versus high-level opposition, right? So dropped the last one to Modafferi, but before that, she knocked out Jillian Robertson, who I just talked about earlier on this show. She knocked out JJ Aldrich, and she knocked out Hannah Cifers, man. I mean, in terms of the flyweight division, like that's you built your way up the ranks doing that stuff right now. Ultimately, I think Alexa Grasso has got a lot of hype because of how she looked versus in her last fight versus Yeon Kim. You know what I mean? She got her out of there. It was a decision win. At first fight at 125, she looked so much more full, like fighting at her natural weight more than trying to kill yourself and get down to 115. But like I said, man, I don't think this is anything in terms of performance necessarily. I do think that this is retribution. But let's talk about this really quickly. I do have to announce Maycee Barber, she made a camp switch. So we got another camp switch here. She was fighting over in with Rufus Sport up in Wisconsin or something like that. You know what I mean? And now she has changed her camp from Wisconsin to Chicago and is working with someone you might know, who is Coach Izzy Martinez, formerly of Jackson Wink MMA, and striking coach Mike Valley, right? So Mike Valley, who he actually popped for COVID. So she has like someone else in her camp, or it's either that or Izzy Martinez. That's neither here nor there. The point is she has a camp switch, and she says she's feeling really confident by the layoff. She's very happy that the injury happened to her, but she never wants it to happen again. But she's happy because she got a chance to take a step back and refocus. And sometimes that's what you need, especially when you're really going for that championship. So let me ask you this. A true switch fighter like Maycee Barber, right? She can come out in any type of way. And we just talked about this with Bobby Green, right? But the ability to mix it up in the boxing like that and literally do those Mike Tyson switches against the cage and all that good stuff, the custom auto switch. She's a bruiser. She's a brawler more than she is a technician. Alexa Grasso is a real deal technician. Who gets the better of the exchanges in this fight? What do you think?
Well, Derick, you brought up Alexa Grasso looking good against Ji Kim in their last outing, and personally, to me, I saw a stiff Grasso. Okay. Until she was in the beginning, she does amazingly well. Keeps her guard super high, keeps it tight. You know what I'm saying? But she looks stiff. Once she started mixing it up, got a little battered up in there. She started to relax, and she fought a lot better. And that's when she really started to outpace Kim. After that, that's when she started to get on her horse and she felt a little damage. She got on her horse and started to really perform. If she does that with Maycee Barber, it's going to be very hard. You know what I'm saying? Maycee Barber is going to piece her up. And if you get hurt with Barber, she's going to go for the kill right away. You saw in her last, like you said, besides Modafferi, she has a round three finish, 2 round 2 finishes, and a round 1 finish against Jillian Robertson, who is, again, another contender, man. And Maycee Barber's nothing to play with. So I definitely think that in the mix-up, Maycee Barber, if she's able to control it early, she's going to have the whole fight going with Alexa Grasso on her back foot. What do you think?
Well, you know what, man? I think that Alexa Grasso who is known as a boxer, right? She's known as simply a boxer, but she has much more weapons than that, man. When she fought Carla Esparza, who is high level, you know what I mean, wrestler, Carla Esparza, she had her locked in a deep arm bar. It was so deep. Esparza's arm, bro, it was like, it was not right. And she, it's in the women's division, which is why I love it, is because their dexterity is so high. They're so flexible. So you got to really break that thing if you want them to tap, right? And that was basically, she ended up losing that fight via split decision. But if she had gotten that arm bar down, man, I think we'd be having different optics and we'd be talking much differently about Alexa Grasso than we are right now. But nonetheless, she doesn't have crazy power. You're right. She is a more technical boxer. And if you stand in the pocket and trade with Maycee Barber, you're going to have problems, especially if Barber is in the southpaw stance, because her left hand is an absolute missile, right? So the question is this, man, you know what I mean? Do you think this fight plays out as clean, or do you think it plays out as kind of rough and messy? I think if it's dirty, if it's messy, if there's, dirty boxing and all that crazy stuff, this is clearly an advantage for Barber. But if Grasso could keep it clean in the pocket, use her head movement and use her footwork, which she has very legitimate footwork, boxing footwork, I think that she could piece her up for a decision win, especially because this is her first fight. This is Barber's first fight coming off of an ACL tear. And you give us a little bit of experience right there, AJ. For the people who don't know, right, tell them the story. You got the knee injury and all that, but to also talk about the recovery and how your mental shifted after that.
That's the biggest one, man, because if your knee's feeling good, you don't mind. Like there's a certain point in the process where you get to a point where you kind of forget you're injured.
Mm-hmm.
You'll literally just start running one day, just doing some moves. You're like, oh yeah, I just had surgery. Like it comes in quick. So 2 months out the road, you're already feeling good. Mm-hmm. So if she's now, I think I forgot when her injury was. It was her last fight against Modafferi, but I don't have the date. It was a long time. It was. I think she was out about a year or so. And man, and if you're feeling good, you're okay to go. And we've seen a lot. There was actually a fighter in the last card. I can't remember it right now. Where he also came back from a knee injury, and wrestling's the hardest part when people push you back and you land on that heel and you put all the weight on exactly that spot of popping. And in the Moxan or Modafferi fight, you could see where she stepped back on that left foot, rolled back on just the outside of the heel. You just see a little pop and the knee goes, man. It happens like that, and it happens to a lot of people. But you get better, and I think at this point, with how much camp Barber has had and how much time to recover, she's probably 100%, man. She's probably feeling good. Not even an issue. Kicking with it, no problem. We saw Tony Ferguson come back for it in 3 months. Yeah. Dude's an animal. So I think Maycee Barber is fine.
I think that Tony Ferguson, though, we do have to kind of point that out, man. Dude is like Wolverine. This dude does not heal the same as everybody else. He got super healing powers or something like that, man. But I don't have the date either, but Barber, she tore her ACL facing off against Modafferi at UFC 246. So that was 14 pay-per-views ago. Something like that. Yeah, I believe 14 pay-per-views ago. So listen, man, ultimately, this is what it comes down to me. You know what I'm saying? Alexa Grasso has more weapons. I think that Alexa Grasso has more weapons to get the job done. But I think that Maycee Barber, if she gets it on the ground and she gets the top control, man, it's going to be a very, very long night. So I don't really have too much more to say about this because I really need to see Maycee Barber fight again to really have some more well thought out opinions, especially against someone like Grasso, who I'm very high on. I picked her to win a bunch of fights that she ended up losing. So, it's kind of that love-hate relationship. But nonetheless, man, who wins this fight and why?
So me personally, I got Barber because I don't think I answered your question before, I don't think it's going to be a clean fight. Okay, if it is, yeah. Grasso has that advantage. She'll stay out, she'll piece her up. Personally, I think it's going to be dirty. It's going to be long. It's going to be a grinder. It's going to be deep water with Barber getting the decision win. What about you?
So I feel the same way, man. I think Maycee Barber is just stronger. I think she has more power, and I think in the women's division, man, they like when Julian Robertson just folded, when Barber just started putting it on her against the cage. When I saw stuff like that, I was like, okay, she just got different power. You just got different power for that division, and we have to respect it, right? Because you can't compare her to Kelvin Gastelum or nothing like that, man. We got to think about, okay, at 125, Grasso's moving up weight. Maybe this is more natural for her, but you're still moving up weight. Barber's going to be bigger than you. I don't know, man. I'm going Maycee Barber with the decision win, and the reason why I'm going decision and not knockout is I'm always wary about fighters coming off of big injuries, and ACL is nothing to play with, man. So there is that one, man. And let's move on. Finally, Usman versus Burns, the main event, man. We could take a little minute to talk about this, man. So let's highlight the obvious, right? The obvious is this. Two former training partners, right? Used to train together at Sanford MMA, both Usman and, Gilbert Burns. But Usman, who was supposed to fight Gilbert Burns when he ended up fighting Masvidal because Burns got popped for a positive COVID test or whatever the case may be. Usman says, you know what, man, I need growth in my career at this stage. I need something different. I think I'm going to go up there to Colorado with Trevor Whitman. I think I'm going to go, he's technically under Onyx Sports, but in reality, he's fighting up there at Elevation Fight Team. And, I don't want to talk too much about that, but I wanted to kind of spell that out. My question to you, man, is if you were going to be fighting somebody, if you're going to be doing any type of combat, even sparring or whatever, do you think this matters outside of the familiarity with each other? Like, yeah, that might have been your old buddy or whatever the case may be, but Usman has already said it. He's like, I don't see a face when I'm in there, bro. I just see a human punching bag. I'm just going to go, you know what I'm saying, take care of that. What do you think about, just the narrative of this bout?
I'm glad you touched on it because I do think the media is making way more a deal of it than it actually needs to be. Because at the end of the day, it's just two dudes stepping in a ring and seeing who's the best, Yeah. And no matter even if we're friends on the opposite side, that's what it is. And that's what we signed up on the contract. That's how it goes. Now, like I said, I don't really think it's a big deal, but when they were talking about it, I think the media that brought that out, I think they brought out one nugget of gold in all those interviews. And when asked about it, Usman said, we both know. He's kind of like leading on. But then he finished it with a nugget where he said how tough this fight's going to be. And with that little bit, and then Gilbert Burns in his interview saying, we've had wars. Like literally, that was like, we've had wars. I think this is going to be a dog fight, man. They both know that this is going to be something that's going to be remembered for a long time. It's going to be a dog fight of where it goes. And I really don't think Gilbert Burns was saying that the advantage that comes from that is his team knows what he's going to do. Man, your teammate isn't in there when you're battling. That's the thing. They can tell you that in the corner. They can shout from the side. But if he's still kicking you in the face, he's still punching you in the face, he's still doing it. So I really think that's not necessarily a big advantage that's going to happen. And I do think it's overplayed, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. My thing is this, though. I really enjoyed he knows and I know. We're the only ones that know. But it's different even than, I'm watching these two dudes spar than when you're the two dudes actually in the ring sparring or whatever, right? My thing is this. Gilbert Burns, he says, Usman knows I could submit him. He knows it. I know it. He knows it. It is what it is. And then Usman even responded to that, saying that. And he was all like, the coaches, they got to hype up the JV guy sometimes when the varsity guy leaves or whatever. And I like the banter and the back and forth, but I do think ultimately, I don't know who has the edge, but Burns said it best. He says, listen, man, Usman talking about he won rounds over me. Yeah, he did. And I've won rounds over him. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, we just gonna get it. And then and I know, all facades aside, that it is going to be a war. So opening odds for Kamaru Usman was at -300, plus 220 for Gilbert Burns. And I was appalled. I was shocked. I was in awe because Usman said it himself. He says Gilbert Burns is absolutely the stiffest competition in the welterweight division, and after him, it's a big drop-off. You know what I mean? He already beat Colby, so I'm sure he's not even counting Colby in that one. But he says after him, it's a huge drop-off, and I don't really know. No one stands out after Gilbert Burns. So with that being said, Gilbert Burns having so many more weapons than Kamaru Usman, you know what I mean, in terms of being on the ground and being able to throw strikes that he doesn't even need to think about takedown defense because he'll just jump guard or do things like that, man. This is what it comes down to you. Let me just say these couple things, these stats. I lost my wording on that one. But Usman has never been taken down in 12 UFC fights. He's first in control time at welterweight with 1 hour and 53 minutes of control time. He has the second most decision wins at welterweight with 9. He's second in top position time at welterweight with 1 hour and 21 minutes. Third most takedowns landed at welterweight with 47. He averages 3.9 takedowns a fight. And lastly, he's on a 16-fight win streak spanning 8 years. This dude, Kamaru Usman, let's just spell it out, man. He doesn't get the get the respect that he absolutely deserves, man. He's on a streak of a streak. Now, as far as Gilbert Burns, he doesn't really have the same accolades. Now, and I do have to mention Henry Hoof, who is, the Sanford MMA head trainer. He's not going to be here for this fight. He said, and Gilbert Burns understands that, so that's neither here nor there. But Gilbert Burns is on an impressive 4-0 run with 2 finishes since moving up to welterweight. He fought at lightweight for 5 years. People forgot about that, but he's definitely not a true welterweight in terms of his career. Fourth in bottom time at welterweight with 1 hour and 49 minutes after only 4 fights. And he's on an active 6-fight win streak spanning 2 years across welterweight and lightweight, man. So now that all of the nonsense and on the stats and all that is spelt out, on the feet, who has the advantage in your opinion? I'm really, I don't know about this one, man. I don't think it's as clear cut as either of us are going to describe it as, but who has it to you?
I agree with you entirely. I don't think it's as clear cut because I don't think Kamaru Usman is actually the best at anything besides, like he said, mixing it all up. Mm-hmm. And I'm personally right there with everybody else. I've been underestimating Usman from the jump, man. For years and years now, I've been not giving Kamaru Usman the credit he deserves. And I think it does become down to the fact that he's not the biggest talker. But like he said, he can mix it up the best. And I personally am going to give him the advantage on the feet because I think that when Gilbert Burns said the whole thing where he's like, I know I can tap him, where he's like, I got that always in my back pocket. Sometimes he might depend on the back pocket a little too much instead of dealing with somebody that's actually pressuring your face. If you're always looking for the submission, but the dude's never giving it up, you know what I'm saying? It's not there. If the opportunity never presents itself, you can never open the door. But with Marty Usman or
Colby, yeah.
He would always say, or with him being able to apply the pressure and actually mix it up and have that takedown defense as well as a strong ground game and still land some elbows, I definitely think he has the advantage with the pressure both on the feet and on the ground. What do you think?
Something that you see in every single Usman fight, almost every single one of them, is that he walks his opponent down and keeps them with their back against the fence the entire fight. Almost every single fight. You know who he didn't, who he wasn't necessarily able to do that with, man, in his last 5? So let me name off his last 5. Jorge Masvidal, Colby Covington, Tyron Woodley, RDA, and Damian Maia. Now, Colby Covington versus Usman, that was a straight kickboxing match, so we're going to disregard that one. But in all the other fights that had a similar trend, Damian Maia was the only one that could stand in the middle or in the center of the cage and go toe-to-toe with Usman. Usman wasn't necessarily able to just kind of dominate him the way he did everyone else until like late in the 3rd round. Now, Gilbert Burns fought Damian Maia as well. And instead of dominating him to a decision, he knocked him out with a left hook in the 1st round, got him out of there quickly, right? My thing is this. When two people so if Gilbert Burns is all about the active guard and about sprawling and submissions and jumping, flying triangles and flying arm bars and stuff, right? And Usman is about, let me put you against the cage and let me clinch you up and do all that stuff. I think that both of them might be a little hesitant to go straight there, at least until the 3rd or 4th round or whatever, till you get sweaty and things like that, right? Where they can't just grab you and hold you down. So I think this fight has the potential to turn into a Colby Covington versus Usman Burns, a straight up kickboxing match. And if that's the case, I like Usman on the feet for the most part because he throws extended combinations. He doesn't just 1-2. He's 1-2, uppercut, body kick, whatever the case may be. Extended combinations is very important. Now, Gilbert Burns, I think he has better head movement. He has better evasiveness, better distance management. And I think that Gilbert Burns is more explosive than Usman. The one thing that you will notice is that Usman likes to get in the pocket, throw extended combinations, and just eat the punches coming back at him. You're able to do that with a Colby Covington who is all about the volume, but I don't know if you can do that with Gilbert Burns who will knock your block off. Tyron Woodley doesn't count because he had virtually no output versus both Usman and Burns, right? So we're not counting that, but nonetheless, man, I think that this is going to be a very interesting bout. And if this were going to go to the ground, right? If this were worst case scenario going to the ground, I mean, who has the edge, man? Who has the edge? Usman is about control and Burns is about finishing you. So what do you think?
Yeah, that's. I mean, personally, I think my biggest thing is with how their styles negate each other. I think it's going to end up on the feet. And you bringing up the thing about Damian Maia, that's very telling because of how good Damian Maia is on the ground. They were able to stand up and make stuff. So I think it's going to end up very exciting for us as fans. But who has the advantage on the feet is an interesting question because Usman is looking for pressure from the top the whole time, looking to control and win the round by the judge's decision, by popular opinion. Whereas, you get a little tired in there, 4th, 5th rounds. Burns, he's still controlled, not necessarily hurt. He's looking for submissions all the time, jumping for triangles, like you said. Man, that's going to be actually very telling for us as just practitioners of the sport and fans of the sport to see which is actually a good nowadays because the sport's evolving so much. Which one is going to be the top dog? It's going to be cool. It's going to be interesting to see if wrestling no longer controls the ground from the top. If somebody who's a seasoned veteran wrestler like Kamaru Usman and who's made a career off of that ground game pressure, holding people down, beating them up, and then winning the fight, goes against, and Gilbert Burns is actually able to tap him out now with how expansive the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game has become. That's going to be very telling for how much growth the whole sport has had. So it's going to be interesting. I don't necessarily know who has the advantage right there. If I had to pick, absolutely gun to my head, I'd probably say Gilbert Burns with the ground on the feet. I think the sport's evolving to where people haven't seen and us as both fans and practitioners are tired of seeing the wrestling always win.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you, man. And that's what I was going to say. I was that Usman has great chain wrestling and Burns has a great chain grappling, right? So he'll shoot 3, 4, 5 different submissions all in a sprawl where Usman will just put you on your back and hold you there, right? But listen, man, let's just know, because if people think Usman's a slouch on the ground, dude's a BJJ black belt. The only difference is Burns is a 2nd degree BJJ black belt. Both have wins over Damian Maia, who's a 4th degree BJJ black belt. So it's like, listen, man, everybody's good at this level, man. You're the best of the best. Everybody's good. How are you going to get the job done? And I'm going to ultimately, this is what it comes down to me, man. Both of these fighters have weaknesses. In my opinion, for Usman, his 2 weaknesses, lack of head movement and his lack of checking kicks. Gilbert Burns has great calf kicks, body kicks, all of that good stuff. And it will be there if Usman does not check. Now for Burns, his gas tank past the third round is something that you really need to keep an eye on, man. You know, Usman is a 5-round cardio machine. And lastly, Burns will get out of position throwing crazy fucking haymakers. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't really care, but that comes with the territory when you're such a high-level grappler and you don't care about getting taken down. So he might be a little more tentative because he probably does not want to be taken down, but then he also says, hey, I hope that Usman tries to wrestle me. I hope he does. So I don't know, man. This could be strategic, all that stuff. Nonetheless, who wins this fight and why?
Personally, for me, Derick, I'm going Usman by decision just because I think he's going to take him to deep waters, grind it out. And I think what the deciding factor for me is, and you can ask this for yourself too, what really separates this fight, because they both know each other. They're both so well-rounded. Like you said, everybody at this level is extremely talented. What I think the deciding factor is who surprises who first. And I think that change in camp, change in scenery, and more so growth that Usman has been seeing both, monetarily, media-wise, and in his fight style, I think all those factors are going to lead him to have a little more confidence, dragging Gilbert Burns into the deeper water. And I think that's what does it for him. He wins by decision. What about you? What do you think?
So my deciding factor for this one is, where does it go? Because if it goes to a decision, I totally got to go with Kamaru Usman, right? I mean, the odds are literally in your favor. 9 of 12 fights have been won by decision, but then that's the other issue. You going to let the judges every single time? You going to let them take care of it? Gilbert Burns spelled it out perfectly. He says, Usman is focused on dominating you to the point where you never want to fight him again. I just want to finish you. I want to get you out of there. I don't want to take it to the judges. And I think that Burns, listen, man, Usman has a big target on his back, and I think that it's really hard for anybody to be motivated after 50-45 and a bunch of people back to back to back to back. I think it's really hard to stay motivated to the level where Gilbert Burns is like, dude, I've been thinking, drinking, eating, sleeping, nothing but championship. I need the gold. I had my heart broken when I saw Masvidal was over there fighting Usman when it should have been me. I think that this dude Burns wants it bad, man, and I think that he's going to get it done. I think he's going to knock Usman out in the third round with something crazy, man. Just one of those crazy exchanges where Usman thinks he could just stand in the pocket and eat one. Burns ain't the one to do that too, man. But I do have to just put this last thing out there. We already gave our picks just for the folks at home. Usman, he has a 5-inch reach advantage over Burns. He has a 76-inch reach as opposed to Burns, and Burns has a 71-inch reach and hasn't fought anybody with a crazy reach like Usman's in quite some time, but they are familiar with each other, so neither here nor there. So that's it, man. That's the main card pick, but who's your fight of the night prediction?
Man, fight of the night prediction, personally, I think it's going to be Jim Miller versus Bobby Green, man. I think that one's going to be a banger of a fight. It's going to be long, so we're going to see a lot of different mix-ups, a lot of different things go into it. I'm going Jim Miller versus Bobby Green. Who you got?
Well, you know what, man? I'm thinking that I have to go all the way back to the beginning in the early stages of the fights, man. So, folks, get there early and tune in because I think Julian Robertson versus Miranda Maverick is going to be a fight of the night contender for sure. And I'm going to give you one more simply because it's the first fight. It might not have too much energy and whatnot. If worst case scenario comes down, Maycee Barber versus Alexa Grasso, man, that could totally be fight of the night. But all of it's cheating because at the end of the day, we know who's going to get fight of the night. It's going to be Usman versus Burns, and that's just going to be that. Maybe performance bonuses for some of the other bouts. But folks, that's it. You see, like I said, we got the new lineup, all that good stuff, and we will be back on Monday to recap all of the action that takes place this Saturday at UFC 258. So if your picks haven't been in yet, get them in. Go get your bet slips in because these odds will be changing. All odds subject to change. They will be changing as you get closer to actual fight night. So that's it for me. AJ, it's a pleasure having you on here as always, man, and we'll catch up with everybody on fight night, folks.